even going from a market where you're trading a 1-bed condo for a 1,200 square foot, 2-3 bedroom on a 50-foot lot, still people are going like, well, I thought I'd get a little bit more.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show, your weekly real estate roundup podcast. I appreciate you being back here. If you show up every single week, please make sure to subscribe and join our growing community. The next goal is hitting 5,000 subscribers. And if you laugh or just learn anything new at all today, or Steve says something that you disagree with, give this video a like. See, that's how we get more likes, okay? If you disagree with Steve, you give the video a like. If you're listening on the audio platforms, hope you're having a wonderful day. Anders Frederiksen has joined the show from ReMax in Winnipeg. He's a third-generation realtor. He's one handsome devil, and we're excited to have him here today. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you fellas doing?
We're doing good. I was telling Steve, I've got contractors upstairs in my house right now, and I had to run down here. And I was like, please just be quiet. They're not doing work, but they're taking a look at everything, and I'm waiting to hear what the quote's going to be so I can share it on this show, and Steve can tell me how dumb I am for upgrading my house, because spending money is a bad thing, is what I've been told by Steve.
No, I got a contractor too right now. He's coming in a couple of days, and we're going to start some stuff. Interesting point, though. The contractor who I've been trying to get to my house for ages phoned me to see if
they checked in with you.
Yeah. I haven't been able to get him going in a while. So maybe people aren't spending so much on renovations anymore.
Well, I don't know, because this morning, even with the guys upstairs right now, they're like, we just want to let you know that we're not getting back to you about start date. It's just we have this other project. I'm like, oh my God, when the hell is this going to happen? I just had blinds installed yesterday. Sorry to bore you, Anders, to start the show here. I had blinds installed yesterday, Steve. From the day I decided this is something I'd like to do, to coming in and measuring, to ordering and showing up and being delivered, it was about 1.5 months.
That's not terrible, is it?
I think it wasn't so much the person doing it; it was the ordering and waiting for the shipment. Apparently, like from December 15th to the New Year, any service provider just shuts their doors, and then you can only put in the order after January 1st or something.
But no cords, right? What kind of blinds did you get?
No cords. I know how it works
cords.
now.
Can't do cords. No.
Yeah. No, I'm actually very happy with what they did. But enough about my renovation struggles here. Anders, what's going on in Winnipeg, man? We've never had a guest from Winnipeg on the show. We're excited to have you here. We've known each other for how long has it been now?
It's got to be close to 10 years.
Yeah.
Over 8 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely over 8. You were one of me and Steve tell the audience that we have a lot of paid friends in real estate, that we paid to be a part of something, to be friends with them, and you fall in that category.
Yes, yeah. We pay somebody to be friends with a whole bunch of great people.
So
pretty good arrangement for him.
Yeah, for Rich, it's a great arrangement. It's good stuff, Rich. Okay, so let's start with the most important question. About a month ago, the Leafs played the Jets back to back, and we beat you both times, and it felt good. And I think there's this hatred brewing between our hockey teams, which was never there before. What's the thought process on someone on the other side, on the losing side of the last 2 games? How are we feeling?
There's a lot of Leafs fans in Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when the Jets lose to the Leafs here at home, there's about 50% of the people in attendance who are still happy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad
Not
then.
me, personally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, enough about the hockey teams. What's going on in your market? Me and Steve have been talking about the fact that activity has picked up for us. Things are happening. By the way, Steve, not now that the numbers are official, not an average sale price. We actually went down from the end of last year in January for average sale price. However, inventory went down and transactions went up. What did you see, Steve? And then we'll get to Anders.
We're rocking and rolling. We had a way above average January.
How much did the average price go up?
Average price went up like $50,000 last month.
What about benchmark? Because that's the one you like, right?
Benchmark didn't move.
Aha. And
so for all those people that hate me talking about benchmark, I'm saying the market should be flat, but now you're saying the market is going good because average apparently is the one people need to use. So.
I don't think so. What's going on in Winnipeg? Are things picking up from at the end of last year?
Yeah, they are. Number of active listings is up. Our average sale price is up 10% from last year, 10% from last January. Right.
Okay, so year over year, yeah,
not from December.
Yeah.
But we did see a significant amount of activity, in the last 3 weeks of December. Bunch of stuff that was sitting on the market. Couple of properties sitting on the market got multiple offers.
In the last few weeks of December.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So weird.
There's just a lot more optimism now, right? Not a statistic, but just in having conversations with people. And I do a lot of new home construction sales, and so I've got a lot of sort of just walk up kind of conversations happening, and there are so many more people now who are excited and optimistic about the prospect of building a new home or buying a home. And for the longest time, I've been sitting on the fence. Right?
And are they telling you why they're excited? Is there like a specific thing that's making them go, well, now we like it?
Yeah, they might be a little misinformed. They're thinking about rate cuts, which, I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen as quickly as some people might think.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Tiff Macklem, there was an article this morning, and he said that, Bank of Canada doesn't have as much control over the housing market as people think. They don't have the ability to influence it as much as some might think, right? I think it was 1.8% of inflation right now is shelter-related costs, right? And that means that, I can't remember where we are in terms of inflation numbers right now, but we have a significant amount of overall inflation that's related to housing.
Oh, for sure. You look at just the rental costs, and then it's just interesting. Like if you look at what's happened in the last, how long has it been now? Has it been 20 months, 24? I don't even know how long it's been since the first rate hike. We're almost
2021. Yeah.
We're almost 2 years. Like it's almost been 2 years. So the cycle's played out, and all the money that I guess was going into entertainment or vacations or all the other things that people do, that money is now just being moved into your house payment because you're just paying more for the same thing you had before. I don't know. I guess though that solves the overall inflation, and that's what we needed to happen. And Steve, people need to stop taking these silly vacations and taking their kids to Disney. So you wouldn't be doing that, would you, Steve?
I'm doing my first one. Chill. It's okay. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to enjoy my life and stop paying my bills and liabilities and responsibilities here, Tom. No, I have a question though. So if you're working sales centers, and so in a sales center, a lot of people don't understand, it's more like a store than it is real estate sales, right? So you're going to have usually a subdivision, or are you doing infill?
Yeah, so subdivisions.
So you're doing a subdivision, you're going to have people walking in. These people walking in, are they locals, or are you guys having the same issue where everybody from other provinces is coming and screwing up your whole market?
It's not so much other provinces as other countries, right? The majority of new home purchasers in our marketplace they're not third generation Canadian, right?
Okay.
So they're newcomers. They have a preference for new housing. We have a lot of old housing stock in Winnipeg. So the prospect of, a home built in 1915, which there are many of, might be a little bit outside of the normal for somebody coming from Punjab or somebody coming from Nigeria, right? So they have a preference for new, and that's a huge amount of the purchasers of new build for sure.
What's the premium? Like if I'm buying a new built house, same square footage as, one of these homes built in, 1910 or whatever, what's it costing me for that versus the old home? Like, is it a big premium to buy something brand new?
It's not huge. Part of that, though, is the fact that the new construction options are available in subdivisions that aren't as central. Right. So those neighborhoods aren't, old growth trees, tons of services, really popular, young urban professional neighborhoods, right? They're more, I need to get into a car and drive 5 minutes, for anything, right? But there is still a premium, even if you look at new versus 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Same product, built by the same builder, 4 or 5 streets away. And so, people will pay a bit more, and it makes sense to pay a bit more so that they can choose their own finishes, right? And select their own lot. They want to face a certain way, right? All those things.
In Toronto, when new home construction goes up, and I mean houses, not condos, because it's not very often it happens. And when it happens, it's kind of outside the city. There's literally people waiting in line overnight to make sure that they can buy one of these properties because they're only building so many. For the developers you're representing in Winnipeg, from okay, we're doing this to selling out, are the houses already built? Are you selling anything on floor plans and specs and then they're building them? What's the time? Are people waiting to buy these things, or is it kind of a grind to sell these?
So we do typically sell based on floor plan and lot.
Okay.
So we don't do a lot of, inventory building, right? We don't do a lot of speculative construction, is a better way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a period of time in late 2020 through 2021, the whole year basically, and into the early part of 2022, where we had waiting lists, right? So a developer will service, 100 lots in a specific phase. There will be, 8 builders or whatever, and they have their allocation of lots, right? And let's say we have, 20 lots. At any given time during that period of time, in most of our developments, we had a waiting list of 40, 45 people. So
Were they all new Canadians or investors from Ontario or BC, or who are they locals?
We saw a little bit of investors from Ontario and BC, but it was mostly still end users.
Okay.
The investors didn't really start kind of, entering our marketplace until late 21, early 22. So there were a couple of months there where, we, as a home builder, had no lots except in the one development in the entire city.
Wow.
There were 30 lots in this development. We had them for a while. There were other neighborhoods that were moving more quickly, and we ran into a position where there was just nothing else to purchase, and we did 30 sales in 10, 15 days. And it was basically just, agent would reach out to me and say, okay, I have these clients. I've got 2 or I've got 3 of them. They're looking for this kind of thing, right? They like this plan. What lots do you have? Okay, great. They want very limited in terms of upgrades. They want these 4 things. And when can we, send it for DocuSign?
So these people are not even showing up to look at where this is located. The agent's just saying, this is what we want. Let's build this thing.
These individuals, yeah, that was the case at that time. Now it is not that way at all.
When was that? Was that that was when the craziness was happening? Was that
22.
Okay, so just before the beginning of rate hike Armageddon.
And then everything fell off a cliff.
Right. And then did anyone try to walk away? Did anyone that bought just before and they're like, oh shit?
Hey agents, a clean and easy to manage real estate website is a must. Go to realtyninja.com/Tom right now and start your site totally for free and pay nothing until you launch. And then when it is your time to go live, you will save 20% off of your entire first year just for signing up at realtyninja.com/Tom.
Yeah, we did have a couple.
Okay.
And those were the out of province investors, right?
Always.
So they didn't close, lost, 40 or 50 grand deposits. But they, I guess, looked at it and said, I don't want to close on something that, in my opinion, is worth
a lot less.
60, 70, 80 grand less than I paid.
And when you guys resold those ones,
yeah,
did you get significantly less? And then were the original purchasers kind of like, well, what the hell, guys? we paid this and now you're reselling these ones. Was there any issues there?
Yeah, there were some that were resold for a good amount less. There were some that were sold for around the same price.
Okay.
Yeah. So just depending on, how far finished they were, what kind of possession date somebody needed. Typically, if something is available for quick possession in the new build space, we can get a bit of a premium,
Right.
because, people need to move
Steve,
in the absence of a whole bunch of other supply, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Steve, this would be an interesting conversation because I didn't actually know that you were this involved with the new build side of things. We talked about on a recent episode that, Steve, you went in with a client and got the contract from the builder and was reading through and basically was like, well, why am I telling your story? Steve, you tell it. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Do you know where I'm going with this?
I think so. Yeah.
The contracts from the developer,
construction contracts
they ask for your
horrific.
next child's naming rights, and if you say no, cross that out. They're like, nope. If it's not ours, see you later. Are you experiencing that, or are they a little bit have some leeway in your market to make changes if people are purchasing?
I would say that the new build contracts that we work with are pretty cut and dry. Like there's not a lot of tricky language, let's call it. There are things that builders can't guarantee. Possession dates are one of them. It's very difficult to guarantee this day. However, most of the builders do hit things relatively on the head. There are sometimes delays, of course, right? It is subject to, independent legal review. Like it's a standard condition that we include. Make sure that everybody has the opportunity to do that.
Is it 10 days for you guys like it is for us between purchase and...
2 weeks. Yeah. 10
2
business
weeks.
days.
Yep.
Yeah. 10 business days for, lawyer's approval of the contract itself. The way that sort of I operate is, when we've got a lot reserved, like we work a little bit differently. We'll shelve a lot for somebody for 30 days.
Okay.
And work on, because we do so many modified floor plans. So somebody will come in and they'll say, I like this plan, but I don't need the main floor bedroom. I want to do a mud room, or is there any way I can get a spice kitchen? Right. Like these are the things that everybody's requesting right now is main floor bedroom, full bathroom, side entry door to the basement, spice kitchen. Right. And that's because we have multi-generational families. We're potentially thinking about maybe renting the basement or having family live down there. We want to have a second kitchen because we don't want to use the primary kitchen and, have the home smell like cooking, right? So
that's when you've made it, eh? Yeah, I'm not going to cook in my second kitchen today. I don't want to.
He sounds like he just described a Surrey house. This is all we build here now.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's because
when you.
Sorry, go for it.
Buddy.
No.
You've made it when you have quartz countertops in your second kitchen that's in the pantry. Right? Like once you upgrade from the laminate builder base, counters, then you're really flush.
I always just assumed in Toronto.
Happening, Tom, is we do have such a big community, usually Northern Indian, like you were saying, Punjabi families who are very large. And you're getting, secondary kitchens for sure. And everything is top notch. And now when I go into a sales center here, when they refer to like a 3-bed, 3-bath or 4-bed, 4-bath, they're only talking about the top floor. Right. So they're only, no, but not like your half bath on the main doesn't count now because that's just a given. The question is there a bathroom for every single bedroom in the entire house? And that's how they're being built here now. And it sounds like that expectation is being now translated, according to Anders, translated across the country, because we do have so many people that are coming from other cultures with bigger families or different living styles, right? It's like when somebody comes from a Chinese city or Asian city, trying to sell them wood frame construction in BC is near impossible because they don't have that there. It's all concrete all the time. So if I have somebody that's new to Canada, just got their PR and they're from Taiwan, guess what, guys? They're buying for sure concrete high rise. 100% they are. So it's just like, it's interesting to hear that is translating across all the way from Vancouver, which is closer to those countries, now across the country into Winnipeg.
Well, and it makes sense because that is what purchasers from that demographic are accustomed to, right? Is what they're comfortable with. And those clients from a new home perspective are a large part of the marketplace, right? And so we as builders look at it and say, okay, what are the features that we need in the homes that we are, or the models that we're developing, right, for the future. And so huge things are, can we get a side entry door on all of our plans going forward? Is there a way to have a spice kitchen or a larger pantry or whatever, right? So yeah.
And these types of properties, so give me an idea. So if I'm listening to this podcast, say, and I'm thinking like, okay, I know someone in Winnipeg, or maybe I'm moving there, maybe we want to buy something as an investment, and maybe we'll go down that path next in terms of, does this even make sense for an investment? How many square feet are these homes, and how much do they cost?
So the average probably size that we're selling right now are in and around 2,000 square feet.
Okay.
So the way that we count square footage is we don't count the basement.
Right.
Here, and I know it varies like from province to province. So main floor and second floor, that's your square footage, not the basement, not the garage, right? So around 2,000, most will have a main floor bedroom and a full bathroom. We'll have 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms and some kind of secondary living space upstairs, like a loft is what we call it, bonus room, whatever. And those are 6 to 625. Land in, GST in, well finished, like not fully upgraded, but good specs.
But brand new house for 625. And if I'm looking at a century home that's similar square footage, maybe you could argue better location based on when it was built. What's that costing me in Winnipeg? Like, what's the delta? Maybe not. I get it won't be as big or have as many features, but like, what is the average price for that?
It can be actually relatively similar depending on the neighborhood. If it's in a neighborhood that is not one of our, 3 or 4 most desirable, then you'll probably see anywhere from, $50,000 to $75,000 difference. So there is a premium on the new, but there's also a premium on those infill building lots, or there's a premium on, the underlying land value of those homes that are more central.
Right.
The 34-foot wide building lots that we build, a lot of these homes on that are 140, 150 grand. In certain communities that are more central, more walkable, more established, those are 200,000 plus.
Steve, I saw you shaking your head when he said the price. Is that in disbelief of how low it is, or the fact that Winnipeg costs 650 grand to buy a new house, and that all of Canada is expensive now?
How do I translate that? So if I go 2,000 up, so that's what, 1,200 on the main, maybe 1,100 on the main, and then 9 up, something like that. So that's another 1,000 down. So if I go 3,100 square foot detached house here, brand new, I'm thinking 1.8.
Yeah,
where I am, 1.8 easy.
3 times.
So like the number you just gave me is a 2-bedroom apartment, 700 square feet, and
So
I'm 45 minutes outside the city.
it's a 1+ den in Toronto downtown for a condo. 650 is a good 1+ den with parking.
Why don't we all live in Winnipeg? Other than the Bombers suck. Other than that, like what?
Well, the weather is maybe one of them. It's a little colder here.
But is it that much colder there? Is it really that big of an issue, or do we just kind of bring that up because it's the easiest thing to say? Like,
I mean, if you're coming from Nigeria, though, like that's a big difference, I would assume. Like you got all these Nigerian guys moving in going, oh yeah, I love 6 feet of snow and mosquitoes the size of dogs. This is great.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, for our clients, like from Northern India, it's not that drastic. They do have winters for sure. I think part of the reason is, there is more to do in Toronto. There is more to do in the, greater Vancouver area than there is here. I think there's there are more job opportunities in general, but I don't think that the average person living in the Fraser Valley, has earnings that are 3 times the average Winnipeg family,
Hmm.
right? So when we talk about like shelter cost relative to, family income, I think that it's a very good value, right? And we're seeing that, like, even though we have very high taxes, property taxes, right?
What about income
Relative,
tax?
income tax is
You
not
guys better
all
than
that.
Ontario and BC, or not really?
I
Kind
think
of the
we're
same.
slightly better than Ontario.
Okay.
I don't know the comparable, or I don't know the comparison with BC.
Okay.
But I think from a personal income tax perspective, we are a little bit more favorable than Ontario.
And is there jobs? Are people
Yeah.
coming there for jobs, or are they coming there for better living prices in terms of what it costs to buy a house and then getting the job?
It's a mixture of both, right? There are better living costs here, so we do see some clients, especially newcomers, who lived in the GTA for a period of time, and they said, "Wow, I'm like never going to be able to purchase a home here," and they're moving to a market like ours, or they're moving to a market like everybody's moving to Calgary right now, right? Average price is around 100 grand more, still quite favorable, right, compared to Vancouver and Toronto for sure. But yeah, they are moving for affordability, and there are jobs, right? Like, we are a logistics hub, so we do see significant jobs in trucking, logistics, things to do with rail transport. We are, though, very much a government, or let's say public employee, is a large amount of the people who live in Winnipeg for sure.
Do you guys have more homeless issues now than you did previously? Like, is that something that you notice if you go downtown? Is it worse now than it's been before? I went out, Steve. I went out yesterday for lunch with Chris Slide, and we went to this new restaurant at the very top of the Well development. I think it's called Area. I'm probably saying it wrong. Amazing views of the entire city, and we're like standing up there, looking out and being like, this is spectacular. I'm like taking pictures, and I kind of move my camera over and look down, and there's a park, a very central park, just filled with tents. And it was like really sad. I didn't realize. I used to walk my dog through that park all the time. I had no idea it had gotten that bad. And then we talked about it on a recent episode that I was in Ottawa, and like I couldn't believe what downtown was like. I've seen what it's like in Vancouver, obviously. I know what it's like in Toronto. Are you guys, is it everywhere now? Is it an issue everywhere?
Yeah, we have the same issue, and it's not quite as evident right now based on the weather,
I see.
right? Just because it's a little colder.
Yeah.
Cities like Vancouver, a little bit more temperate, right? And so, people over the winter, you will see out and about more. But definitely in the warmer months here, yeah, there's a number of tents in some central locations within the city.
And did that start, not start, but did it become more clear during the
It's been
pandemic?
exacerbated
Yeah.
by the pandemic for sure. It was not as evident before. There were definitely still, we did have a significant issue with those who were unhoused, right? But not to the extent that we have now, or at least it is much more apparent now, right?
Yeah.
To the average person who's driving their vehicle through downtown.
And on the rental side of things, like, what is it? I don't know if you do a ton of rentals or just have an idea what's going on, but like, we know that we've actually had some comments on this podcast saying like, you guys talk too much about investment and whatever. Like I'm a renter. I want to buy a house. Like, help me, give me some advice. Are people renting in Winnipeg? Is there a huge delta? Like in Toronto, yes, rent's super expensive, but owning still costs way more on a monthly basis. Like, just based on where rates are right now, what's it like for you guys?
Not as big a delta.
Okay.
So
it's just the down payment?
Yeah. So it's a down payment issue typically when we're renting. When you look at the spread between a mortgage payment and a rental, payment, it's really, really not that substantial. Now you got to factor in other costs of owning that property taxes and everything else, but still, it is much better long term, right, to own that property. You know, we all know that. The viewpoint that, you know, your first residence could be owned by you is still very much a case in Winnipeg. Okay. So 22, 23, 26-year-old kid living in mom and dad's basement, okay, can go out and purchase a property. And, you know, those are 1,000 or, you know, 1,200 square foot bungalows built in 1955 that may or may not have been updated. And they're 350, you know, 325. If they're really nice, they're 400 grand. Right? So it is possible to get into the market. And then if you look at, you know, what your mortgage payment is on that, even at today's rates, there's not a massive spread between renting.
For tenant, landlord, or homeowner insurance policies, go to squareone.ca/the Tom Storey Show. Use the link in the description. Save $20 when you start your free quote right now.
What are those? So let's say, you said 325, right?
Mhm.
So let's say you put down 20%, right? You buy that, you get the 5.5% mortgage, whatever it ends up being. Like I have to do that. I can't do this math live here, but if you then rented it out immediately, I know I'm going back to the investment side of things because that's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
Are these things cash flowing with 20% down? Do you get is cash flow properties a thing still, or is every market in Canada now that's gone?
No, there are cash flow properties. They exist. You have to find a pretty good deal. Right. They're not everywhere. But you know, for instance, I have clients who they basically purchase to rehab and then rent. It's sort of their investment strategy. And we closed. Well, we contracted on one this past week. We closed in April. That home was purchased at $345,000. It's a 1,250 square foot 2-story built in 1915.
Okay.
So it's a 2-bed up, you know, 1 full bath up. Main floor is just open living space, kitchen. The basement is a poured concrete basement that has been, you know, steel reinforced, like they've done, you know, bracing, right? So it may scare off some potential end user purchasers.
Okay.
But for clients like mine who've done that work themselves and understand that it's been done correctly with the permits, you know, they're not scared of it. So we purchased that at 345. They're pretty confident that they can get about 2250 in rent on it. And he worked backwards from a 5% cap rate. He's very happy with that purchase. And he could not have purchased, you know, because there was another home around the corner that needed all of those improvements, because those improvements were all done in the last year, right?
Right.
Windows, kitchen, flooring, baseboards, doors, bathroom, the foundation work, shingles, exterior balconies, everything. Could not have purchased something and done even like a splash and dash reno and got under 345.
Steve, are we buying investment properties in Winnipeg? Is that the game plan now?
Not a friggin' chance, man.
You got to find somebody to manage them.
Totally. You got to find someone to manage it. You got to know the area. I don't know. I did this when I went on my trip last year, or a couple of years ago now, all around BC. I just look at those properties that are available that are affordable. And I think most of my buyers would be like, I'm not living there. No matter if you gave it to them, right? Like there's almost, like you're saying, there's an expectation now of maybe a spice kitchen and a basement suite and a whatever all these things are, quartz countertops. It does take a certain person in my market that would be even interested in living in a 1950s bungalow now, which is actually almost the same living standard as today. I mean, we still got dishwashers, we still got all the stuff we need. I'm just wondering if people are more receptive to that living style in other cities, because I think in Vancouver they're not, right? Like when I tell somebody now that, oh yeah, you know that 1980s apartment building you were looking at, it's got no laundry. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? No laundry. Like, yeah, they didn't put laundry in condo buildings till like 1984, 85 here.
Mhm.
And people were like, well, that's not acceptable. I'm like, well, that's the one thing in your price range. They're like, okay, I'll keep renting. I'm like, you're going to keep renting for laundry? I guess.
But that's
Tough life we got.
And is
I was
that
just gonna say
no laundry in the unit, or is that no laundry in the building?
it's usually the unit.
Usually
In
the
Toronto.
unit will be shared laundry. It'll be
Okay.
shared laundry somewhere in the building,
Yeah.
generally.
But Steve, that's such a good point, because it's like, okay, we always talk about the fact, and I guess you can't really argue with the data, that like we don't have enough houses for the population growth and the people that are already here. But we do have a lot for sale right now at this moment in time. There is properties for sale. So I don't think it's just that we don't have enough for sale. It's like we don't have enough for sale at a price that people are interested in. I think that's kind of what it is, or what they can, maybe not interested in, but maybe just purely just what they can afford.
That's a good assessment.
They could, there's a lot of renters right now listening to this podcast that could buy a property in the next 30 days if they decided they want to. They just don't want to. You're sometimes trading down for space and then paying more. And you're like, well, this sucks because I had this. I know I didn't own it, but my life was pretty good.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make
downgrading
that that downgrade to pay more money, but you could do it to own a property. But it, you know, it feels like you're going backwards. Even though I know financially, if you're willing to hold it for a long time, it will push you forward. We all know this. I don't think really anyone disagrees with that over a long period of time.
It's even so much further than that, though, Tom, because I'm continuing to get the calls of people who are renting that don't want to stop their rental, that want to buy an investment property for somebody else to rent. I'm getting that call at least once a week now.
Well, it's because they're
like,
are
what
they
are
in
you
rent control?
doing?
They're in rent control. So why would they move?
No, it's just their lifestyle that they want to maintain where they are. And then I'm like, listen, your tax benefits are garbage for this. Like your capital gain.
It's not
when
your
you go to
primary
sell,
residence, yeah.
right? Not your primary residence. I'm like, you're going to pay you like, what is it now? A 2 cap on where I am right now, if you're lucky. Like, this is a bad strategy. Like, get your principal residence first, but people just aren't willing to do it.
But
They don't want to give up the lifestyle. They don't want to give up the Dodge
Steve,
pickup payment.
I still I still
Are we
think
talking about
that
Alberta again, or what?
No, it's here too. People drive Dodges here too. We've got terrible people here too.
I have no idea what's going on in the truck world, so I'll let Steve have his fights with people about makes and models of cars. But don't you think that strategy of like let's say you're renting and you're comfortable and you could buy your first property as an investment property, that's still better than not doing it? No, if you're going to hold it for a period of time and you can afford to do it and you don't want to mess up your lifestyle, it is. It is.
Why?
Okay, so if option one is just buy it and move into it, yes, I understand that for capital gains if you sell in the future. But if they decide that's not happening, option number 2 is stay where you are, buy a place, rent it out. It's still better than just renting for the next 10 years if you had a choice. Or if you have a huge lump sum of money, maybe you're just putting in a GIC these days because the numbers are still pretty good, right? Like it's still
depends
better
on
than
your investment alternatives, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's the alternative, Steve? If they're not going to do those first 2, what are they going to do?
I don't understand the question. Like,
Here's my question.
Buy a property and
Here's
you
my
freaking
question.
live in it, man. Like
No,
that's
no.
what you were.
Okay, but let's be realistic for a second. There are some renters right now that don't.
I'm going to
hear me,
stop
just
you.
the-
Hold that.
no, no.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. I'm the most realistic person you know. Now continue.
People that say things about themselves, it's never true.
Ron.
You don't have to say it about yourself.
Anders the most realistic person than me.
What's that?
No,
Most realistic.
we're just talking over.
I
each
don't
other.
even. You see, you
Continue with your thought. I'm sorry for
just
interrupting.
you threw me off. I don't even know where I was going with this. Okay, now it's coming back. If I'm renting, okay, and I can afford to buy something, but I don't like it for myself, but I'm in a good rental situation, there's almost less emotion to it if you buy it as an investment and then rent it out because you don't actually care if you want to move into it or you like it. And maybe one day you do originally buy it as an investment, but then your life changes. Sure, you rent it out for the first 2 years, but then you do move into it. It becomes your principal residence. And then from that period forward, you don't pay capital gains. I still think that's a realistic option for people. Are you talking people out of doing that?
Mm-hmm. Regularly. No, because the question usually goes, I'm just shocked at how much money people have. And they're like, listen, I've got this 100, I've got this 150, I've got this 250, I've got this $350,000 sitting there. I want to become a real estate investor. And I'm like, holy crap, how much money do you have sitting on the sidelines? I can't believe it. But then they go, okay, well, I've got 350. So I'm going to buy a detached house with a basement suite. I'm going to rent them both out and I'm going to cash flow. And I'm like, you're going to cash flow negative. And they're like, what do you mean? So they have got all this money, but it's not good enough to put 50% down on a 2-bedroom condo and then actually cash flow. It's like I have to stretch myself. And I'm just constantly having the conversation. Every single week I'm having the conversation. How much do you want to feed this per month? And that's where it stops. Because people are like, well, this is supposed to be my side gig that's going to help and get me more money into my pocket month to month so I can deal with all this inflation. I'm like, you got a pretty bloody good nest egg right there. Why aren't you taking your 5% on it? But if you're going to invest it. But if you got 350 grand in the bank and you don't own your principal residence, no matter how expensive the property is, there's something wrong.
I do think there's a disconnect between that person that's speaking to you and believes they're going to cash flow and reality. I had one of those appointments this week. Great past client of mine, really intelligent guy, looking for an investment. Has a good amount of equity in his home that he bought in late 2020. It was a new build, and didn't factor in a whole bunch of different things that take away from your net income on a monthly basis, right? So I run the math for him because he said, hey, this property looks great. Like, I like the location. It's close to us. It's actually an apartment style condo, which, in our marketplace, we see a lot less people purchasing condos for rental. Probably in larger marketplaces, that's like the only property you're purchasing for rental.
I didn't even know you guys had condos.
Yeah, we have condos, but they're not a huge part of the marketplace.
Right.
Like our residential detached is still the huge meat and potatoes of the market. And then we will see we call it single family attached, right? But semi-detached would be, I think, the term.
Why do we all have Steve calls it a duplex, I call it semi-attached, and you call it single family attached. It's just very confusing to everybody.
It is confusing. It'd be nice for everybody to get on board and call it the same thing. But then we'd have to settle the rancher and bungalow debate.
Right.
100% a rancher.
I think,
or if you're in the States, it's a rambler. So
really?
Yeah, in the States, it's a rambler.
Well, that sounds kind of cool, actually.
Right? Sounds like a car.
Anders, I got a story for you, but I want to kind of set it up. So if I'm moving to Winnipeg and I want to purchase a property for $400,000 and I do not want a condo, give me an idea. I know we talked about like the unrenovated bungalows or ranchers or ramblers for $325,000. But if I have 400 grand to spend. I want like a, nice enough place to move in that's like 1,500 square feet. I guess, can I buy that? Does that exist in a safe area to live in that I could raise start my family there?
1,500.
Okay, maybe 1,200.
Yeah, so 1,200 it exists.
Okay,
for sure.
Okay,
1,200 it exists. It's probably going to be built in the 50s or 60s.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to have new shingles, new windows, updated kitchen, flooring. It may or may not have a recently finished basement, and it's going to be on a 50 by 100 foot lot. Okay, so with double detached garage, maybe.
So what that gets you in Toronto is a parking spot. No, I'm just kidding. What that gets you in Toronto is a 350 to 400 square foot junior one bed or bachelor condominium in a newer building, right? Like that's the craziness here. Now, the reason I asked you that, we actually just signed up a new listing. We're putting it on the market in 2 days. she's moving. She was from Winnipeg originally. She's moving back to Winnipeg. Okay. And it was interesting because, she's made some pretty decent money on her condo in Toronto, but it's not a big space. It's a 1-bedroom kind of what you would call a starter condo here. And we were talking about, okay, what's the time frame to do this? We're going to get the Toronto condo sold first. I think she's actually going to Winnipeg early March to see properties. I would have sent her to you, but she was referred to me from a Winnipeg agent. So, can't get crossed there. But where I'm going with this and this long kind of preamble is that she was talking with me and going like, I'm just so frustrated because my budget's $400,000. I want to go back to Winnipeg and get rid of a chunk of my mortgage. My budget's $400,000. And I can't believe how much it costs to go back to Winnipeg from what she remembered previously, because she's been in Toronto for 5 years. And so it's just so interesting, right? Like even going from a market where you're trading a 1-bed condo for a 1,200 square foot, 2-3 bedroom, maybe finished basement on a 50-foot lot, still people that knew what it was like before going like, well, I thought I'd get a little bit more for this budget coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the 1,650 square foot home that we built in 2016 for ourselves, my wife and I, in a new home development, we purchased for $350.
2016.
Right? Double attached garage, 1,650 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, right? New build. So over the 7 years we were there, or 6.5 years we were there, we did the landscaping, put appliances into it, some window coverings, nothing crazy expensive for window coverings. And arguably we should have probably sold it in 2022, when we contracted on our new build that I'm sitting in now.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the Storey team at Royal LePage Signature in Toronto, Ontario. Although he's here on the recording with me right now, and I don't like saying nice things about him to his face, Tom and his team, well, they are probably your best pick if you are looking to buy or sell residential real estate in downtown Toronto. Let's face it, probably the city of Toronto itself. Tom, make a strange face if that's wrong.
That is correct.
That is correct. All right, we are good to go. So if you are looking for one of, if not the top agent in downtown Toronto for your residential real estate needs, condos, semis, detached, if you're looking to upsize or downsize, give Tom and his team a call. And Tom, how would they get in touch with you?
I think the best thing would be go to the first link in the description of this episode, and you can book a call with me at a time that works for you. And we'll go over all the information you need and see if we can be of service.
And I recommend, if you are listening to this from across the country and you're either moving to Toronto, or if you're an agent outside of Toronto and you have a client moving to Toronto, go ahead and book a call with Tom, because he would love to take your referral as well. That is the Storey team at Royal LePage Signature in Toronto, Ontario. He's a pretty good guy. He knows what he's doing. Just don't tell him I said so. Tom, the last part we need to do before the end.
This communication is not intended to breach...
Cause?
Any breach.
What's that?
That was...
Oh, you want me to say it?
I don't know what the word is. I don't even know what the words are.
This communication is not intended to cause or induce breach of any existing agency agreement.
And now, back to the show.
But we waited till February 23. Still sold for $550, right? So roughly $200,000 lift over, a 6.5 year holding period. But most of that lift came 2019 or 2020 through to 2022, and then you lost some of it in 2023, right? So that 5-year horizon that your client is looking at it from,
that's what happened.
Yeah, things have changed a lot in that 5 years.
And what's interesting too is on the Toronto side of things, not from 2016, but if you bought a Toronto condo mid 2018 to 2019 and you're trying to sell it today, in most circumstances, because what happened with the pandemic and everything with the rates in the condo market downtown, it hasn't changed that much.
Mhm.
But if you bought it
Same here.
5 years before that, you would have doubled your money. So people hearing like, that's a great story. Buy in 2016, I guess percentage wise, you went up like 25, whatever it ended up being, 30 something percent.
200 on 350, right? It's,
Yeah, a good chunk.
57. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. So I was way off. So crazy growth. But that's not something someone can buy in Winnipeg today and go, 6 years from now, my house is gonna be at 57%. That's just not gonna happen again based on these interest rates.
No, there's not room for that to happen based on rates, right?
What do
And,
people
I mean,
expecting when they're buying it? Do they expect growth because of what you saw for that short period of time?
the general expectation still is growth for sure. And I expect growth in prices.
What do you think?
You know, I don't necessarily have a specific number, okay? But I look at the number of people who sat on the sidelines for 18 to 20 some odd months. I look at the fact that we have not constructed a whole lot of homes in the interim. And I look at the fact that we still have a significantly growing population, right? And I mean, I know, don't want to be the stereotypical realtor that says, well, we don't have enough supply. But I mean, we don't have enough supply. It's evident. And I think the number is we have the lowest supply per capita in the entire G7. Right. And that's housing units total, not,
Yeah.
single family detached homes or condos, or it includes rental. It's everything. Right. I think the most in the G7 is France, and they have like 540. We have 440. I think is roughly the numbers per 1,000 citizens.
Right.
Or 1,000 residents, I guess.
It's interesting because even in your market that, listen, people from my market, people from Steve's market, even people from Calgary these days, they're on their high horse because they've had their nice little lift. They're like, oh, Winnipeg's cheap. But people in Winnipeg want to have separate entrances to their basement so that they can rent that out. Like every market is kind of getting to the point now that you have to be creative. And you can't be snobby about the fact that, you might have to rent out a piece of your house to get what you want.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, Winnipeg being perceived as cheap, right, is when you live in Winnipeg or have lived in Winnipeg for a long time, or your family's been here a long time, you think everything's expensive.
Yep.
Right? Because that is your experience. Your experience is tied to what the market is like here. You're not coming from downtown Vancouver. You're not coming from Calgary and looking at it and going, oh, well, I can get 500 more square feet for the same price.
I was going to say people probably still complain no matter what.
Yeah, they do. People have a tendency to do that.
So you're third generation as a real estate agent, which is kind of unique. I'm curious, your parents, the grandparents, all the other generations, they've seen all these cycles happen and they've seen way higher interest rates than we're complaining about now. Was there any guidance from them to you by saying, like, not just you selling real estate, but being someone that invests in real estate, that this is just kind of how things work, and don't be worried, and this is how it happens, and
there are market cycles, right? And I mean, the story that my dad, I do a lot of business with my dad because he and I are new home sales partners. And for the clients who are building new, who are selling their home, who are not working with a realtor and have questions about market value and a marketing strategy, we do lots of evaluations. And one of the stories that he tells a lot during those evaluations is, maybe your home hasn't appreciated as much as you'd hoped over the last 2 years, but it's appreciated enough that you're covering your cost of selling, you're putting some money in your pocket, you have a little bit more money down in the next house. Whereas in the early 90s, I did a lot of these evaluations, and you may have purchased your home 6 years before, and it is worth the same or less than you paid. And by the way, you still have transaction cost. Right? So it is always, whenever something is happening that is, extreme in one direction, the comment like "this too shall pass" is very good to keep in mind, right? Because cycles happen, things change, and so yeah,
Right.
there was definitely guidance there.
Steve, one of the first episodes, or maybe it was like in our first 10 episodes of this podcast, we had Melanie on from Fort McMurray. Their peak of the market is still 2012 to this day. 2012 was there, and a lot of people are underwater. I remember when we were talking about how we send the video CMAs to our clients to let them know what's going on with pricing, and Andrew Russell, who's also been on the podcast from Red Deer, was like, "What if their house is worth $100,000 less? Like, do you still send them updates on that? It's gotten worse." And having those tough conversations, when things aren't going great, is frankly something that in our markets we didn't have to do for a long time. It was like, "Hey, Steve, guess what? Your house is worth $100,000 more. Congrats."
My first years in real estate, though, like they were downward. I sold lots of properties where 2 and 3 and 4 years later, they were losing 15, 20%. Right.
Were
Like
you helping that you helped them buy and sell though?
Mhm.
Okay.
So in like, let's say 2010, I would sell somebody a condo for 220. It wasn't uncommon in 2013 to sell it for 179. Like, it was real. That happened. So I remember actually one in particular, I sold it to her for 230 and we helped her sell it for 210. I want to say she was in that place for 3.5 years. And I mean, at that time, you're talking almost a 20% drop, or sorry, a 10% drop. But again, she bought her fully detached house for $430,000. So that's now a 1.6. So I don't know. I mean, living it long enough, we definitely don't go through the boom and bust like a Fort McMurray. And I would assume that as soon as you get to smaller and smaller towns, the boom and bust can vary greatly.
Yeah, and even in Winnipeg, which is greater metro population of 800 and some odd thousand, we don't see quite the same boom and bust either, right? Like the way I describe it to people coming in from out of town is that we're relatively boring. Things are going to increase a few percent, things are going to decrease a few percent. We don't see I think, was it 2017, the Toronto market went off a cliff like 20% or something in 6 months, right?
It went in the first 4 months of 2017, our prices increased 26% in the first 4 months of the year.
And then
It's wild.
And then foreign buyer tax, rent control, and a laundry list of other things came in. And actually, you know what? Made a difference. Didn't stop condo prices from going up, but really pushed everything else down. Because psychologically, people are like, "Oh my God, the government stepped in here. This was getting bad. Let's cool the jets."
So when someone's purchasing a condo in Toronto, do you have a mandatory cooling off period?
Not for resale. For pre-construction, yes.
Pre-construction, yes.
Steve,
so we do
Steve has mandatory for everything.
Yeah, BC is the most regulated real estate market probably in the world.
Probably.
We don't need to get Steve.
Lowest fees, by the way, with the lowest fees.
Yeah,
it is true.
Yeah. Here in Winnipeg, like condos haven't really seen a lot of price appreciation relative to detached or semi-attached.
But it makes sense, right?
Freehold. It
makes
does,
sense.
and it totally does. And part of that is when you write an offer to purchase on a resale or new build condo, okay, and you have an accepted offer to purchase, there is a mandatory 7-day cooling off period.
For resale?
That resale, yep. So there is a mandatory 7-day cooling off period where you can review all of the documents.
Wow.
Right? Bylaws, budgets, meeting notes, all this stuff. And if for any reason you want out, you're out. Right? No harm, no foul. So how do you structure a multiple offer scenario for a condo? You can't.
So that's only condo resale. No.
Wait, but freehold doesn't count?
No. So like single family,
that's weird.
Single family home, no mandatory cooling off period.
Why is it for resale? I don't understand that.
Well, it's resale and new. Why is it for
New
resale?
I can actually understand, though. It kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Resale, it's like, you can see it. It's right there.
Mhm.
That's what it is. Do your due diligence.
I think part of the challenge is that they're, and I may be coming at this from a Winnipeg perspective, but and probably rightly so. There were a lot of buildings that were apartment flipped into condo.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, wood frame, walk up, 3-story, that may have been flipped into condo 30 years ago. And it had been a tendency by people on the board and the people living in the condo unit to not want to fund the reserve very aggressively.
Mhm.
Okay. And so now I got this building that's 50, 60 years old. It needs significant improvements. There's no money in the reserve, and we have large special assessments, right? I think part of the reason, because the Condo Act, I'm not going to remember my dates here, but I think it was 2012 it was updated. And so that brought in a lot of these requirements, and it forced people to like actually take a look at these things, right? And then we had a mandatory or a change to our reserve fund study requirements. So reserve fund studies didn't used to be mandatory. Like, you didn't have to have one. So you're buying a condo, you have some idea of the financial health of the condo corp, but not any idea of, okay, when does the parking lot need to be resurfaced? How much does that cost? Have we been putting away enough money for that? Right? So when you're buying a condo, you're buying a more complicated asset in a sense than a single family home. Yet the people purchasing a condo, typically by virtue of price point, are those with the least amount of experience.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's interesting that we didn't really have those converted apartments. There's not that many. Like, our condos started in the late 80s on Bay Street, and then built. And we still, in today's market, because it's slower, you're still getting a 5-day financing and a 3-day status review by the lawyer. So we're doing all those things anyways. It's just when the market was hot, you do it before the offer date.
What a perfect segue into our very last thing to talk about here, Tom Storey. Speaking of conversions, what is this I hear about? Is it 69 Yonge Street and 3 King Street East? Does that sound familiar?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No. There
Talking about the
is
Toronto
an office
Flatiron?
building. There's an office building in Toronto
That's sold.
that has been flagged for conversion.
Oh.
Am I breaking Toronto real estate news to Tom Storey?
Did you not put this in the show notes? Do I not?
I just saw it in my news feed right now. No, I saw this earlier today. This is, hang on, let me read it. The once gleaming headquarters of Canadian Pacific Railway at 69 Yonge and 3 King East have been somewhat approved, or at least the first steps in getting an exemption into residence. It is currently an office tower.
And that's going to keep happening. I saw a very interesting interview when we were in New York for Inman, talking about a company that specifically did this, but they were saying like there's just so many differences that to just say one day all this office space becomes residential is not really realistic either. It's going to be a small percentage, but if it can help housing in some way, and you're cool with not having a balcony in your new condo because those office buildings don't have balconies, then I guess it can't be a bad thing. This can only be a good thing, right? If we're all saying we need more housing, it's there and it's empty right now. Or
17% of downtown office space is sitting empty, apparently, according to this article.
I thought it would have been more than that, actually.
Really?
Empty or just not leased? Empty or not leased? Because there's lots of things that are leased that people aren't showing up to the office still.
The original submission included 14 studio condos, 65 1-bedrooms, 27 2-bedrooms, and 21 3-bedrooms with no on-site parking.
Well, it's located at the end of Yonge Street.
I have no idea where that is.
I mean, 1 Yonge Street is the water, so it's right downtown in the core.
So no parking wouldn't be an issue, really.
Not really. Interesting. But who's going to buy that building? A bunch of investors?
Video coming on, Tom Storey.
A bunch of investors or a bunch of end users? A bunch of investors are going to buy those units and rent them out, and that's probably what's going to happen. The final thing I want to wrap this all up on is I find that I feel like just because of our community, like how we all know each other and we share everything and we're open with each other, what happens. But a lot of the real estate industry is still like this closed off little box, and we all look at each other as competitors. Just want to share like a story that maybe the public can hear about us as real estate agents that will make them like us a little bit more. So I'll do my best. We had clients that we took out and showed quite a few properties to one day. And as we were wrapped up the last showing, they were driving home and they stopped at 2 open houses on the way home because they just saw them and they walked in. I knew both of the agents that had these listings, but I got an email from both of those agents saying, hey, just so you know, your client stopped by our open house and they seemed like they were interested. I wanted to give you a heads up. Mm-hmm. They were telling me they weren't trying to steal our clients away from us. And yes, we already had a buyer representation signed and all that stuff. But it wasn't like, oh, you're working with them. No, like just come to us directly. Like there's not as much of that going on anymore. What's interesting is that these are top agents that do a good amount of business. These aren't the people trying to get by, that every sale is their livelihood. So I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of people think different about our industry. Like we do work together and try to make things happen.
I had the same thing, and now that guy is doing relentless follow-up because there's a lot of motivation on the part of the seller. So yeah, it happens. People cooperate again, but is that because that's old school agent? Those are agents that have been in the business 5, 10, 15 years. They're not generally speaking the new guys. I'm terrified for the new guys that don't understand. Like, do you know how hard it is to get, and I apologize if you guys do this, but do you know how hard it is to get people to turn off the lights, lock the doors properly, and leave the business card behind so my clients knew that you were in the home? Do you know how hard that is to get them to do?
I can tell you how hard it is because we just signed up a house listing downtown that was listed at the end of last year. And I asked her, what was the issues last time where you have and her number one thing was like the real estate agent wouldn't come and check on the house and it was left open several times.
So is it easier or harder to get people to lock the door than to actually show up within an hour of their scheduled window?
Lock the door happens more often than they show up on time.
Okay. Because that's the challenge that we experience. And I mean, I don't know what agent counts, have either gone up or down for you guys since the market has changed, right? Mm. But our agent count has gone up significantly in the last let's say 4 or 5 years. We used to have a full-time rule here. So you could only derive income from real estate sales. You couldn't have other T4 income if you're a realtor, right? That was deemed to be anti-competitive, because it restricted the number of registrants. And so now, anyone can be a realtor. And I guess what I would say is just that because there are more individuals who are maybe not doing quite the same volume and in it every day, right? It's really important to know who you're working with, right? And we're seeing some of those issues that we did not have before.
I think we're just seeing it just because there's no mentorship, right? Somebody signs up at an online brokerage. Nobody knows who the heck they are. They don't know who their own managing broker is. There's nobody showing them how to show a home. Nobody showed how to show a home. Nobody's shown how to send, for us, it's touch base, send a touch base message, show up the property, have an expectation of who's going to be there when, how to turn lights on, how to turn lights off, like the littlest stuff that should be easy on how to present a home to a buyer and then leave it safe for the seller at the end of the day. I think all that stuff is gone in our industry. I think it's all gone.
And that's unfortunate because, we need to have a much more positive perception of our industry among the public, right? I truly believe that what I do helps people, right? I don't want to have somebody's opinion of what we do colored by, a bad experience that they've had, right?
We've been
Yeah.
preaching this a lot recently. If you're good at what you do, find a way to tell more people without it being egotistical, because I'd rather you work with them than them experience a bad experience from someone else, right? Like we've really been
100%.
talking a lot about this recently. That was fun. That was awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. For the people that are making the move to Winnipeg or already live in Winnipeg and just want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, best place to go is probably just to our website, which is filesfrederickson.com.
Nice.
Or you can quickly Google Anders Frederiksen and I'll be right there.
Steve, final thoughts for our audience this lovely week?
I think both your hockey teams are not as good as my hockey team.
I mean,
That's true. I don't even know if that's true right now, actually.
That's a pretty wild statement.
In the standings, that might technically be true at the moment, but who cares about this? Who cares about the numbers, Steve?
I mean, we could win president's trophies constantly and then get the Stanley Cup ripped away from us. It's fine.
It will happen. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week, and have an amazing day. Bye.